All right, folks, welcome to the runningrestaurants.com podcast, where we're bringing the tips, tools, and techniques you need to make your restaurant more profitable and more successful. I'm your host, Jaime Oikle. I'm excited for today's episode because joining me is longtime friend and colleague, Darren Dennington, founder of Service with Style. Darren is a longtime industry veteran, from owning and operating his own restaurants to coaching and consulting restaurants all across the nation and country, to running Service with Style, which is a secret shopping service, to speaking at the restaurant food shows nationwide. So this guy has seen it all. And Darren, that last bit that I just talked about, that's why we are together today. You're speaking at the upcoming New York Restaurant Show here towards the end of March, but also giving a exciting workshop called Restaurant Management 201. So I was hoping to kind of tease folks a bit on that, prod you for 20, 25 minutes of some of your best management and leadership content today. So how's that sound?
That sounds great, Jamie. It's good to see you, and thanks for having me back.
Yeah. I think it's been, oh my gosh, we've done this a bunch of times in terms of interviews, both live and for recordings. So Darren can talk about any topic in the restaurant industry for 100% sure. But today we are going to stay laser focused in on this topic of management and leadership. So how do you start talking to folks even about this topic? Because it can be sensitive, right? I know what I'm doing. I've done it this way. How do you talk about management and leadership with restaurants?
Well, my thought was to kind of challenge your listeners today to take a look at their leadership team. Not the whole restaurant, right? There's a lot of moving parts, but let's step back and see where your leadership team is, and whether you're about to open next month or you've been 10 years in business. It's always nice to just pause and say, well, what do I have going on with the leadership team? And what I find is that there's a lot of simple, basic steps, right? You're trying to first define the management team and then add a little bit of clarity to the leaders so that they understand really what's going on. And the first part is simple, easy, basic steps, but most places, quite frankly, just jump over them because an organization chart, really, what do I need that for? Well, it's that first step that is so simple, so easy. You grab a yellow pad of paper and just mock up an organization chart. Let's say you're running a restaurant, I don't know, $1.5 million, maybe $2 million a year in sales, right? Things are going pretty good. You're busy. Take a look at the leadership team that you have for that. Maybe it's 5, 6, 7 people. And an organization chart is just that first basic step that says, what positions do we need, and how do we communicate, and what roles do we have? So you put the owner at the top, and then the general manager, and the kitchen manager reports to the GM, and the front of the house manager reports, and then both of them have an assistant. So there's 6 people on your leadership team. And now you've got to start to add a little bit of clarity. You want everybody in the organization to understand who the leaders are, what their roles are, and what they're doing so that they can effectively do their job. And that second step that a lot of times is jumped over because it's quite basic, job descriptions. All I'm talking about is just some basic, very easy to use job descriptions for your leadership team. Maybe you don't need them for servers and hosts and your line cooks, but we're just talking about the leadership team. So if you've got 6 positions, you want to decide those titles so that everybody understands what comes with that position. The industry gets very confused, right? We give titles to certain people, but maybe that position really isn't needed. Is it a chef? Is it a kitchen manager? Are you running with supervisors? Are they shift leaders? The titles add that first level of clarity, and then the job descriptions add the basics to who they report to and what the fundamentals and the characteristics and the skills of their jobs are, right? So if you've got an organization chart and a job description, well, now you're starting to really get the right people on the team if you know what you're looking for. And again, if you've been doing this for 10 years, take a look at your team to say, do I have the right people on the bus? And let's fill that bus. And there's obviously a lot that goes into the recruitment of the people, right? You got to be hiring right and attracting the right people and some good incentive packages. but you also have to look inside your team, the ones that are going to be superstars in a couple of years, and you can be developing these people and pulling them in on your leadership team. But you identify first who's on the bus. Does that make sense where I'm starting?
Yeah, I mean, I already wrote down a bunch of things, and I could go in a whole bunch of different directions. So let's see where we go next. But yeah, the right people and the right seats is one of the most important things you can have, and not telling people anything they don't know there. But how descriptive should these job descriptions be? How much detail is there? How do you go through it with them? What accountability is there? Are there sign-offs like, Jim, this is the things we envision you doing. Let's both sign off on this, that you're going to do these things, and we'll review it in 3 months and 6 months. What are some of those pieces of a puzzle?
Right. Well, now you're starting to add the clarity and what we were talking about, getting the right people on the bus. I assume that you have that book behind you. It's From Good to Great, right? You get the right people, the ones
I don't just have it behind me. I have it right here.
Unprompted. It's a great book. But when you have those right people, now there's steps to building them in a team, right? First, it starts individually. And that job description, in my eyes, doesn't have to be that in depth. But the conversation with that new manager or that person on your leadership team has to be in depth. Mm-hmm. And if you have already identified 6 positions in your leadership team, now you've got to go out and make sure that you've agreed upon those positions with the person that's in them, so that they understand the bigger picture of what they're accountable for. And they understand you as the owner or the general manager really have to get that connection, get that person, so that they're now starting to get settled, right? Again, if you're opening next month or in 10 years, you probably have a lot of your managers that need a little bit more training. So that's the first piece, right? We don't put in-depth manager training programs in a lot of independent restaurants because they're hard to implement. But the owner or the general manager just has to focus on getting that new manager orientated for 3 or 6 months and making sure that they learn the basic positions and they know how to run the POS and they can jump on the line and they're comfortable behind the bar. They have to allow some time for the managers at whatever level to settle in and know what their role is. So the owner, the general manager, has to be in development mode. It's conversation over conversation over conversation after months and months of passing information on to these new managers, whether they're new to your organization or they're new in their role. They have to be acclimated to what your expectations are of them as a manager.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to ask you a question, which we've touched on before. Okay. And it's semantics to some extent, but some people will get really worked up about it. The terms leadership versus management. And you have Restaurant Management 201 and is the title of your program, which I love, right? It's not the basic. It's like going beyond the basics as if you're in college. This is not the intro. This is the second level. And it's terrific content. But we have this dichotomy, leadership versus managers. They kind of mean different things. Darren, how do you make the distinction?
One great thing, you'd mentioned the workshop that we're taking place in New York, and my co-presenter Allison has a great take on this. But the basic portion, I'm looking at leaders to lead the business and grow the staff and develop them and try to make them long-term employees that care about what we're doing. And management comes down to the shifts. We've got to run the day-to-day, and we need systems and checklists and things in place to make sure that we're consistently doing the things over and over every single day to make everybody's life easy. So manage the shift and lead the people.
Right. Yeah. It is one of those things, because and you hear this phrase a lot, right? Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're a leader. And just because you're not a manager doesn't mean you can't be a leader, and so forth. And so let's talk about that bigger picture. And I really want to ask you a question here because I'm talking about books, I'm reading this book right now, which is the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson. And you can have any opinion you want on Musk, and mine was different before starting this book, and I'm about halfway through. Couple fascinating things in the book that remind me of the restaurant business. Gordon Ramsay type people of, just screaming at your staff to think that is a method. And in Musk's story, yeah, he sounds like while he's, obviously a genius in many ways, just a very tyrannical boss, will scream at people and so forth, and, fire them on a whim. And so that obviously has worked because he's the richest guy on the planet. But there's different ways to lead. And so I wanted to ask you, style-wise, thoughts on the Gordon Ramsay screaming and Elon Musk yelling at folks versus more of a nurturing approach. Both things can work in a way. What do you think?
I look at the restaurant as having so many moving parts that it's really hard to manage with just a few people. And that's why I look at it as a leadership team. And I genuinely think that it's a team sport, right? You've got 6 managers trying to run this business for the week, and they're all helping in different ways. I've always been a believer of build it so that it works for everybody, right? I want them to enjoy their job. I want them to feel good about it. I want them to feel that they're a part of a leadership team that covers their back and tries to grow the restaurant so that it works for everybody involved. And I guess I look at these 6 managers, 6 leaders on your team as a division of responsibilities so that we're all on the same page working towards the greater goal. If I look at the owner or the general manager, their goal should be developing this leadership team because it takes time. When I look at the leaders, right, the managers running the day-to-day business, they should first be working on systems and staff. So when you have the right leaders that are working together as this great team and they're really communicating well, then you take some simple, easy to use restaurant systems that you certainly help provide to all your listeners and implement these things so that the days become a little bit easier. And if you can get the staff to buy in, that's the key. So the daily managers have to get the buy-in of the staff. It's got to be a relaxed work environment. It's got to be enjoyable. It's got to work for everybody involved. And when you have the leadership, the systems, and the staff, then this leadership team starts to identify the priorities. And every single restaurant has different priorities. If the leaders, the 6 people, are saying, hey, what do we really need to work on? You know what? I think we've got some big core problems with our menu. Maybe we could take the next 3 months and make that all of our priorities. And when they can work on that together, that's when you can really knock out projects, right? It's hard to implement a training system, but when 6 people work at it for a couple months, you get a pretty good training system. And the one piece that I really suggest for this leadership team as a starting point is a responsibilities list. There's probably a list of 35 or 40 small little areas inside your restaurant that your leaders divide and conquer. So you know who deals with the uniforms and who deals with Pepsi and who handles your marketing flyers. And it adds that clarity. So the owners have to work on the definition and the clarity of the leadership team and really develop them. The managers start to work on the operations and the staff, and then they come back together and say, let's identify 3 priorities, 3 big projects that by January next year, we could really knock out. Well, let's do a marketing chart, a marketing program, and new financial systems. And 6 people together can tackle those. But the problem is that so many other pieces come into the day, really just distracting us. And we never get to those good things. So I suggest kind of starting at the beginning, and maybe you jump over a few of those steps really quick and get your management team back on course. But take a look at where your leadership team is and see what they need. There's some real key questions that you need to ask as you're doing this, right? Do I have the right people? Are they properly trained? Do I need to work on some leadership team building? Maybe individually they're superstars, but together they need to come together as a group. So you've got to identify a lot of steps.
Yeah, it's obviously a juggling match, and there's no easy answer for some of those pieces. I wrote down the word coach when you said it a little while ago. Do you use any metaphors? Because I know you're a big sports fan. We got the hockey stuff in the background. Big hockey fan, and it is a metaphor that is used quite often in corporations. Coach, pep rallies, leadership, big game, new year, big opportunity. Do you ever go that direction in terms of when you're giving speeches and coach mode?
I like to just stick to the details that really help. Yeah, metaphors can make your point, obviously. Yeah, big sports fan. I'm certainly a big hockey fan, but I guess that's where the team side of it really comes from. And yeah. I just find that you can easily identify additional people on this leadership team to help you get through all the days. But yeah, metaphors, I look at it a little bit more as situations. Like situational leadership is what I love to see. And situations come up all the time in the restaurants, right? You just got 20 tables in the last 10 minutes and you've only got 3 servers on the floor. And you can have a fire in the kitchen. You can have all kinds of situations. And for the most part, restaurants run fairly well, right? And people understand how to do this, and you've got some good people. But situations arise where that's when you need the leaders. And I find that when leaders show their team what they can do as a leader, and they try to earn the respect, and they the team looks at them as knowledgeable and people that I like to work with, then when the bus comes in and you get slammed and everybody turns to you for guidance, and nice and calmly you lead them through the next 30 minutes and everything goes smooth, opposed to not really having that leadership structure and those leadership characteristics. When you get super busy and overwhelmed, you just deal with it yourself as a server. You don't reach out for any help, and that's leading to additional problems. So leaders have to set themselves up as people that you want to turn to in times of need. So situational leadership is kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Something I want to ask you, because I know you're a proponent of doing daily meetings and so forth. And I something made me think about this while I was asking the last question. And in terms of when you're coaching, like I coach a bunch of 12-year-old girls and they play softball, and it's such a challenge to do that, right? Because of their age and their short attention spans. And so one of the things we do is we'll do a quote or a story, and mostly it's from sports or leadership thing. And like the one I used the other day with them, talks about hard work is a choice, attitude is a choice, discipline is a choice. And so sometimes you can have those meetings where you use something like that as fodder. And then you ask them to talk about it, and then you bring a story around it and so forth. Like, excellence is a choice. What's the opposite of that? Well, doing a lazy job, is that good for the restaurant? Is that good for the business? No. Hard work is a choice. Yes, you need to come with that attitude, and doing the opposite again is obviously not the right attitude to bring into it. So I think it's fun to do that, in a way that folks can relate to. How else have you been successful in doing daily meetings, kicking them off? Is it keeping them short? How do you get folks engaged in that ongoing learning process?
The daily meetings are a communication tool. There's so much information to pass on to different people, right? If you're running this $1.5 million restaurant, you probably have 40, 50 employees, and there's a lot of changes and a lot of information to make sure everybody has. So first, let me back it up a step and say that the most critical meeting is with the leadership team. That's a weekly meeting that I like to utilize for a lot of different reasons, right? First, it's just to pass on simple information. It's to solve problems as a team. But as the owner or the general manager, I also like to use that as a development tool, right? I take some time during meetings, and maybe we break away from the topic and I throw in a metaphor, I throw in a story and tell a little bit of history to bring everybody up to speed all together. So that's the center of everything, is the weekly manager meeting. And owners and general managers should be taking that very serious, because that's where you can build some camaraderie between your managers, and you can work through some personal challenges and really get strong as a leadership team from there. And then, yes, you need a couple tools to pass on the information to the team. Well, my favorite is the shift meetings, right? We huddle up so that we communicate. We get ready for the shift, and we try to make sure everyone's in a great mood. And if they're done right, they can be very, very productive. And like I said, it's just one of those tools that genuinely helps. But part of those systems that I had already mentioned, communication systems are right on the top of the list for me, which manager meetings and a couple good ways to consistently communicate all the small things to your staff. And then the bigger things go one-on-one meetings, right? A lot of individual meetings in the restaurants.
Yeah, let's hit on one or two more things before we wrap. One thing I want to ping you on today, right? The power of public recognition. You kind of just touched on it, doing one-on-ones, but there's so much power in public recognition. And it could be simple as employee of the month plaque in the back, quotes on the back, part of your daily meeting or monthly meeting, calls people out for things that they did. Have you seen folks do this well, or how do you encourage folks to give that public recognition? Because when you get it in front of all your peers, man, it makes you feel like $1 million.
Oh, you probably have this book on your shelf too, the 1 Minute Manager, right? It's the 1 minute appraisal, the 1 minute reprimand. If you see a problem with an employee, address it, handle it right there, nice and simple. Use it as a training and try to move on. And the positive reinforcement in front of a crowd, right? You want to praise in a corner and
criticize in the corner. Yeah.
Thank you. Criticize in a corner and praise in public. And I just find that there's not enough praise in restaurants. We work really hard. There's a lot to do every day, and simple little things that go wrong can change the attitude of the shift. So saying some thank yous, saying I appreciate you individually goes a long way, and pulling out some great things that you saw yesterday, or maybe they were highlighted in a secret shopping report. Hey, let's see how the shopper was greeted, and you can read right from the report and give some good praise in front of the entire team. And yeah, it makes people feel wanted, and it makes them feel needed.
Yeah, and going back to spinning things the opposite way, I'm telling you, I'm reading this book with Musk, and yeah, he destroys people much like Ramsey does on TV. And what that takes, sometimes people can take it and they understand where it's coming from, and then sometimes they leave 2 weeks later because people oftentimes don't want to be treated like that, especially in front of other people. It's embarrassing. So be careful with where you critique people. It is dangerous, but you can never go wrong praising people in public. Absolutely never go wrong. Last Charlie thing. What about any tips? Just kind of thoughts here, open-ended thoughts. How to get the best out of your people, out of your staff. Any quick thoughts there?
Making them feel that they're a part of it, that we're focusing on the management team. If they want to be included and identified as part of this team, then early on, they should be part of the brainstorming. They should be involved in some of the problems that they're trying to fix. And for example, if the owner comes in and says, hey, everyone, here's our next priority, we're redoing the menu, opposed to talking with them and seeing what they see as challenges and making that decision together. If I genuinely felt like I was included in the conversation about where we're going with our next menu, then I take ownership of it. I'm proud of it. I want to work a little bit harder.
Right.
So include the staff. And management is easy to include, but there's a lot of ways to do that with all your employees. And when you take them outside of their normal job and have them do some extra projects, they're learning, they're growing, you're watching them develop, and And maybe in 2 years, that hostess is now your front of the house manager because he or she was included in so many things over the last 6 months, and they want to grow with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that point, because if you ever bring out a whiteboard and you just ask people, hey, what are some good ideas for the menu? And you start writing down their ideas, man, they really do feel part of that process.
Yeah.
Versus, like you said, the other side is, hey guys, these are the 6 things I want on the menu. Go get it done. It doesn't engender the same feeling. So, all right, as we close, Darren, give me an overview of Restaurant Management 201. What's going on in New York? When is the show? What's it look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the New York Restaurant Show. And I guess I've, like you said earlier, I go to a lot of shows. I find them incredibly informative. I find them very helpful. You find a few new products, you make some new connections, and you get some great ideas. And New York has always been one of those fantastic shows. So it's March 23rd, 24th, and 25th in New York at the Javits Center, just outside of Times Square. And this show has really grown. It is. I heard the other day that they're almost double the exhibitor space from last year, and last year was packed. So it's got tons of things going on. There's over 40 hours of free educational sessions on the show floor. They do a phenomenal job at all the culinary demonstrations. And for me, going to the show, I always have 2 or 3 things on my mind that I want to source a new oven. I want to take a look at new fryers or new flooring. And it just gives a phenomenal way to do that all together and look at competitors, right? Maybe you're looking at 3 or 4 ovens in the same place. And New York's a great city, and it's a perfect show to travel. There's a Rangers game and a Islanders game the day before.
There you go.
Hamilton is playing the night before. So there's tons of things to do. And it's a great show to travel in. And personally, I'll be one of my presentations on the show floor, 10 Steps to Great Service. And then really excited about the workshop that we have called Restaurant Management 201. And it's held on the 2nd and 3rd day of the show. So that's March 24th and 25th, and you pick either one. And it's a 3.5 hour workshop. Okay. And Jamie, we got just a ton of content. It's myself and Allison. Nice. And we've been working for 2 years on this, and we just continue to put in more details and more details. And it's really for the management team, exactly what we were talking about today. This is an opportunity for a great step forward for 3, 4, or 5 year managers to come to New York and see the show and catch a great workshop and come out of the workshop with some real direction and some good priorities. So yeah, super excited about the show.
Excellent. Yeah, I know we chatted briefly, and I know you're taking advantage when you're in New York to hit some hockey games and hit the theater. Always a great place to go. So check that out, folks. Darren Dennington with Service with Style. You can check him out at the New York Restaurant Show this upcoming March 23rd to 25th. You can register for his workshop on your website, I believe, Darren, restaurantmanagement201.com. Is that correct?
It is. And I also have a promotional code for a free ticket to the New York show. So if you sign up for Restaurant Management 201, I've got a code to discount the $55 show pass. So you would just pay for the workshop, and the promo code, once you're on the registration, is RM201. So for Restaurant Management 201, RM201 gets you a free ticket when you come into the workshop.
Excellent. Look at that. Perfect. And the New York Restaurant Show itself is at newyorkrestaurantshow.com. That's easy to find. Service with Style is at servicewithstyle.com. So a few domains there for you. One more, runningrestaurants.com. So anyway, sure to check us out for more restaurant marketing, service, operation, tech tips, and more. We appreciate it. Feel free to subscribe and please review us and rate us where you listen to this or watch it. Let us know what you think and share it. That's actually the most important one. We appreciate all that. Thank you so much, Darren, for spending some time with us today. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Jamie. Hope to see you in New York.
Appreciate it.